A different kind of science. The observatory dome hummed with tension as Dr. Marcus Holloway adjusted the quantum stabilizers on his experimental device. Unlike the sleek, government-funded laboratories across the campus, Marcus's workspace was a chaotic blend of cutting-edge technology and jury-rigged components salvaged from discarded equipment. "You're playing with fire, Marcus," said Professor Amelia Vaughn, leaning against the doorframe. Her arms were crossed, expression skeptical as she watched her former student fine-tune the machine that had consumed 3 years of his life. Marcus didn't look up from the intricate array of crystalline filaments he was aligning. "That's what they told Einstein too, Amelia. Einstein wasn't trying to punch holes between dimensions." She stepped closer, examining the device. Despite her misgivings, curiosity gleamed in her eyes. "The board's talking about cutting your funding. Again." Marcus finally straightened, rubbing his stiff neck. At 37, his dark hair was already threaded with silver at the temples, face etched with lines from too many sleepless nights and not enough sunlight. "Let them. I'm 2 days away from proving every single one of them wrong." The machine before them was deceptively simple in appearance, a ring of specialized alloys 3 meters in diameter, surrounded by 4 quantum field generators. What made it revolutionary was the underlying theory, the Holloway equation, which suggested that spacetime wasn't merely curved but folded, with dimensional boundaries that could be traversed given the correct approach. "The simulation data is solid," Marcus continued, pulling up holographic models that danced between them in the dim light. "We're not just talking about faster-than-light travel, Amelia. We're talking about bypassing space entirely." Amelia sighed. "And what if you're right? Have you considered the implications? What might be waiting on the other side?" Marcus's reply was interrupted by a soft alert from his communication device. He glanced at the message and smiled. "Perfect timing. Our liaison from the International Space Agency has arrived. The captain and the scientist." Captain Valentina Orloff moved through the university campus with purpose, her military bearing obvious despite her civilian clothes. At 42, she had spent 20 years pushing the boundaries of human exploration, first in the deep ocean trenches, then in Earth's orbit, and finally as commander of the first permanent Mars base. Now she had been pulled back to Earth for what the ISA director had cryptically called the next frontier. When she entered the observatory, the contrast between the clean institutional hallways and Dr. Holloway's cluttered workspace was jarring. The room felt alive with humming equipment and flickering displays. "Captain Orloff," Marcus greeted her, extending his hand. "Welcome to the future of space exploration." Valentina's handshake was firm. "Dr. Holloway. I've read your papers. Fascinating theories, if somewhat unorthodox." "The unorthodox ones are the only ones worth pursuing," he replied with a grin. "This is Professor Vaughn, my former advisor and current skeptic in residence." After introductions, Marcus wasted no time. He led Valentina through his research, explaining the principles of quantum folding, how space itself could be manipulated like paper to create shortcuts between distant points. "The ISA has been monitoring your progress with interest," Valentina said carefully. "But there are concerns about stability and control. Your models suggest considerable energy requirements and potential side effects." "All pioneering technology has risks," Marcus countered. "The first rockets exploded on launch pads. The first quantum computers destabilized entire power grids. But we worked through those problems." Valentina studied the quantum ring. "What exactly am I looking at, Doctor? A teleportation device? A wormhole generator?" "Something far more profound," Marcus said, his voice dropping as if sharing a sacred secret. "This is the quantum fold, a gateway not just to distant parts of our universe, but potentially to parallel dimensions entirely." Before Valentina could respond, the machine emitted a soft pulse, the crystalline elements within the ring beginning to glow with an ethereal blue light. Marcus checked his readings with wide eyes. "That's impossible. It's activating on its own." "Shut it down," Amelia urged, already moving toward the emergency protocols. Wait, Marcus held up a hand, transfixed by the readings. The quantum field is stabilizing, it's forming a coherent pattern I've never seen before. The air within the ring began to shimmer, like heat rising from hot pavement, but with colors that seemed to exist just beyond human perception. The computers around them went haywire, screens flashing with calculations and readings that made no logical sense. It's receiving something, Marcus whispered in awe. This isn't just my technology activating, something is connecting from the other side. First contact. The shimmering intensified, coalescing into a swirling vortex of light within the ring. Equipment throughout the lab beeped an alarm as power surged and electromagnetic readings spiked beyond measurable levels. We need to evacuate, Valentina said firmly, military training kicking in. Now, Doctor. I can't leave, Marcus protested, fingers flying across controls. This is it, the moment that changes everything. The quantum fold is working. The vortex suddenly stabilized, the wild energy condensing into what appeared to be a window, a perfectly circular opening that revealed not the wall behind it, but a strange, luminescent chamber bathed in amber light. And within that chamber stood a figure. It was roughly humanoid, tall and slender, with mottled silver-blue skin that seemed to both absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. Its 4 limbs were jointed differently than human arms, and its facial features were alien yet somehow recognizable, large, multifaceted eyes, no visible nose, and a small mouth that didn't move when it spoke. Because it did speak, not with sound, but directly into their minds. Greetings, boundary crossers. The 3 humans froze in astonishment. Marcus recovered first, stepping cautiously toward the ring. Hello, he said simply. My name is Marcus Holloway. We are humans, from Earth. The being tilted its head, the gesture eerily familiar despite its alien appearance. I am Zenith, observer of boundaries for the Novan Collective. Your dimensional intrusion was unexpected but not unwelcome. We have long theorized about parallel realities. As have we, Marcus replied, his voice barely containing his excitement. This is a historic moment for both our species. Valentina stepped forward. I'm Captain Valentina Orlov of the International Space Agency. May I ask how you were able to connect to our experiment? We didn't expect to actually reach another dimension. Your quantum oscillations created ripples that our sensors detected. We merely responded in kind. The being, Zenith, moved closer to the portal on their side. Your species has achieved dimensional awareness sooner than anticipated. The pattern suggested at least another century of development. Emilia found her voice. You've been watching us. We observe all dimensional boundaries. It is our purpose. Marcus couldn't contain himself. This is extraordinary. The implications for physics, for exploration. Caution, human Marcus. Zenith's mental voice took on a different tone. Dimensional transit carries significant risks. The boundaries exist for reason. Risks? Valentina asked sharply. What kind of risks? Before Zenith could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the lab. The quantum ring's energy signature was becoming unstable, fluctuating wildly. The field is collapsing, Marcus shouted over the noise, rushing to his controls. The power draw is exponentially increasing beyond our capacity. This is unfortunate, Zenith communicated, a note of concern evident even in the telepathic message. Your technology is crude. The boundary is tearing, not folding. The lab's lights flickered as the university's power grid struggled to handle the drain. Through the portal, they could see other Novans rushing into the chamber on Zenith's side, their movements graceful but urgent. You must close your side immediately, Zenith insisted. Before. The communication cut off as a blinding flash erupted from the quantum ring. The portal warped, its perfect circular shape distorting like a reflection in troubled water. It's destabilizing. Marcus yelled, frantically trying to shut down the system. The dimensional boundary is fracturing. Worlds collide. The air crackled with energy as the quantum ring began to spin of its own accord, generating a whirlwind that swept through the lab, sending papers and lighter equipment flying. Through the distorted portal, they could see Zenith and the other Novans engaging some kind of containment technology on their side, flowing arcs of energy that seemed to push back against the instability. Their technology is incredible, Marcus gasped, even as he worked to prevent disaster. Focus, Doctor. Valentina commanded, helping Emilia secure crucial research data. How do we shut this down? I'm trying, he shouted back. But something's changed, the quantum signature is mutating. It's as if the laws of physics themselves are different where our dimensions meet. The portal suddenly expanded, its edges pushing outward beyond the ring's boundaries. As it did, ghostly images of the Novan laboratory began to overlay their own reality, tables, equipment, and alien technology partially materializing in the human lab, occupying the same space in an impossible overlap of realities. Zenith's voice returned to their minds, fragmented and strained. Destabilizing our side as well. Dimensional bleed, must close, danger to both. A shock wave erupted from the quantum ring, knocking all three humans to the floor. When they looked up, the situation had dramatically worsened. The portal had shattered into multiple smaller rifts that floated around the laboratory like broken mirrors, each showing different glimpses of the Novan world. Through one, they saw what appeared to be a vast city of crystalline towers. Through another, some kind of energy production facility pulsed with power. And through the largest rift, Zenith stood with several other Novans, their stance now decidedly defensive as they manipulated complex energy patterns with their limbs. Your intrusion has been interpreted as aggression by our security protocols, Zenith communicated. I cannot override the automated response. It's not aggression. Marcus cried out. It's an accident. We can work together to close the rifts. Valentina had retrieved an emergency kit from her backpack and was rerouting power through a portable generator, trying to stabilize the lab's systems. Their technology is interfering with our equipment, she reported grimly. Nothing's responding correctly. Through the rifts, they could see Novan security forces arriving, wielding devices that seemed designed for dimensional containment, or warfare. Stand down, humans, came a new, harsher mental voice. Your dimensional weapon will not succeed. Weapon? Marcus was aghast. No, this is scientific exploration. We mean no harm. Emilia had made it to a secondary control station. Marcus, I think I can force a system overload, it might collapse the rifts. Do it, he called back, just as one of the Novan devices emitted a pulse that rippled through the dimensional tiers. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The quantum ring fractured along its circumference, venting superheated plasma. The rifts began to shrink, but as they did, they pulled aspects of the Novan reality through, strange matter and energy that shouldn't exist in their dimension. In the confusion, Valentina saw one small object fall through a closing rift, a handheld device of obvious Novan design. Without hesitation, she grabbed it and tucked it into her pocket. This breach will be sealed, the harsh Novan voice declared. But know that the collective now recognizes humanity as a dimensional threat. We will be watching. With a final surge of energy that overloaded every system in the lab, the rifts collapsed. The quantum ring, Marcus's life's work, was now a twisted, smoking ruin. Emergency sprinklers activated, drenching them all as darkness fell over the lab. In the sudden silence, lit only by emergency lighting, Marcus stared at the destruction in shock. What have I done? Valentina placed a hand on his shoulder. You've changed everything, Doctor. She glanced down at her pocket where the alien device lay hidden. For better or worse, humanity isn't alone anymore. Emilia approached, her face grim. And it seems we've already made enemies. The implications hung heavy in the rain of sprinkler water. Humanity had reached beyond its dimension and touched another civilization, one with technology far beyond their own, who now viewed them as a threat. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, across dimensional boundaries never meant to be crossed, the Novan Collective was preparing its response. The confrontation. The aftermath. 3 weeks after the quantum fold incident, the observatory had been transformed into a high-security research facility. Military personnel patrolled the corridors, and the remains of Marcus's device had been enclosed in a containment field under constant monitoring. Director Reiji Tanaka of the Global Defense Council stood at the window of the makeshift command center, watching a fleet of helicopters landing with the latest equipment. At 54, Tanaka had navigated geopolitical crises across 4 continents, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for an interdimensional incident. The UN Security Council is meeting again tomorrow, he said without turning. They want answers I don't have. Marcus looked up from his workstation, dark circles under his eyes indicating weeks without proper sleep. Tell them we're making progress. Are we? Tanaka asked, finally facing the scientist. 3 weeks, Dr. Holloway, and we still don't understand what happened, much less how to prepare for what might come next. Valentina entered the room, freshly returned from a briefing with military command. The orbital defense platforms will be online within 48 hours, she reported. Though what good Earth-based weapons would do against dimensional travelers is anyone's guess. Marcus returned to his calculations, frustration evident in every line of his body. We're approaching this all wrong. Preparing for war should be our last resort, not our first. Tell that to the Novans, Tanaka replied. Their final message wasn't exactly friendly. They misunderstood, Marcus insisted. If we could just establish communication again. That's exactly what we're trying to prevent, Tanaka cut him off. One-dimensional tear nearly destroyed this facility. Imagine what a deliberate incursion could do. The tension was interrupted as Professor Vaughn hurried into the room, excitement visible beneath her professional demeanor. We've decoded part of the Novan technology, she announced. The quantum signatures are unlike anything we've seen, but they follow patterns, mathematical constants that transcend dimensional boundaries. Valentina exchanged a look with Marcus. They had kept the Novan device she'd recovered a secret from all but Amelia, hiding it from the authorities who would have immediately locked it away. Instead, they had been studying it in a hidden corner of the lab during the precious few hours when they weren't under direct observation. Show me, Tanaka demanded. As Amelia pulled up the decrypted data, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. The monitoring equipment tracking Earth's orbital space lit up with multiple anomalies. What's happening? Tanaka barked at the technicians. Energy signatures, sir, one replied, voice tight with tension. Similar to the quantum event, but much larger. They're appearing in Earth orbit, 7 distinct anomalies forming simultaneously. On the main screen, satellite imagery showed swirling vortices of light materializing against the backdrop of space, each easily hundreds of meters in diameter. They found us, Marcus whispered. Diplomatic crisis. Within hours, the situation had escalated beyond anything Earth's governments were prepared to handle. 7 massive Novan vessels had emerged from the dimensional rifts, positioning themselves in a precise formation around the planet. They made no aggressive moves but ignored all attempts at communication. In Washington, D.C., an emergency session of global leaders had convened. Director Tanaka represented the scientific community, while military commanders from a dozen nations argued over response strategies. We should launch a preemptive strike, the Russian general insisted. Before they complete whatever they're planning. With what? The Chinese representative countered. Our most advanced weapons are like children's toys compared to ships that can cross dimensions. The American president raised a hand for silence. Director Tanaka, give us your assessment. Tanaka stood, acutely aware that his words could determine humanity's fate. The Novan vessels appear to be in a containment formation. Analysis suggests they're not preparing to attack, but rather to quarantine us. Like a disease, someone muttered. Like an unknown variable, Tanaka corrected. We accidentally breached their dimension. They're ensuring it doesn't happen again, at least not until they understand us better. He pulled up the latest images from deep space telescopes. Furthermore, our scientists have detected quantum disturbances beyond Mars's orbit. The Novans aren't alone. Something else is moving in our solar system, something even they seem to be monitoring. A third party, the British Prime Minister asked. Possibly. Dr. Holloway's team has a theory. All eyes turned to Marcus, who hadn't been scheduled to speak. He cleared his throat nervously before stepping forward. The dimensional breach didn't just open a door to the Novans, he explained. It sent ripples through multiple dimensional layers. We may have inadvertently signaled our presence to entities beyond just the Novan collective. A heavy silence fell over the room. What are you suggesting, Doctor? The President finally asked. I'm suggesting that the Novans might not be the threat we should be worried about. They responded to our breach with containment, not destruction. That suggests caution, possibly even a protective stance. The Russian general scoffed. Protective? They called us a threat. Yes, Marcus agreed, because from their perspective, we destabilized the dimensional boundaries that might be keeping something else out. Unlikely alliance. Back at the observatory, Valentina worked alone in a secured lab section, the Novan device spread out in components before her. Her military training had included advanced xenotechnology theory, but the reality of alien tech proved far more complex than the hypotheticals. You're holding it wrong, came a voice from behind her, a voice that seemed to resonate directly in her mind. Valentina spun, drawing her sidearm in one fluid motion. In the corner of the lab stood a Novan, its silver-blue skin gleaming under the harsh lights. Unlike Zenith, this one appeared more angular, with markings along its limbs that suggested either rank or specialized function. How did you get in here? She demanded, weapon steady despite her shock. Your dimensional barriers are like gossamer to one trained in quantum traverse, the Novan replied mentally. I am Kal, formerly chief scientist of boundary studies, currently, what you might call a dissident. You're a long way from home, Valentina said, not lowering her weapon. And in the middle of a heavily guarded facility. Your guards watch for physical intruders. I didn't exactly use the door. The Novan, Kal, gestured to the disassembled device. That's a communication node, not a weapon. You're trying to access its data core, but you've disconnected it from its quantum heart. Valentina narrowed her eyes. Why would you help me? Because the collective is wrong about humanity. Kal moved closer, seeming unconcerned about her weapon. I monitored your original breach. I saw that it was exploration, not aggression. But the Protectorate won't listen, they're too fixated on the veil. The veil? The dimensional boundary that separates our universes from others less compatible with life as we understand it. Kal picked up one of the components, reassembling it with practiced efficiency. Your breach weakened the veil momentarily. It drew attention we've spent millennia avoiding. Valentina slowly lowered her weapon. You're saying we accidentally signaled to something dangerous. Dangerous doesn't begin to describe the void masses. They exist in dimensions where what you call physics is merely optional. Kal finished reassembling the device, which now pulsed with soft amber light. The collective has sent ships not to attack Earth, but to prevent another breach, and to monitor for void intrusions. Why come to me? Why not approach our leaders? Because I've analyzed your species enough to know that your leaders would respond with fear and aggression. But you, Captain Orloff, you took this device not to weaponize it, but to understand it. That suggests wisdom. Valentina considered her options. Every protocol dictated that she sound the alarm, but instinct told her that this might be humanity's only chance. What do you propose? Together we find the human called Marcus Holloway. Together we fix what was broken. Race against time. Director Tanaka's face was a storm of barely contained fury as Marcus and Valentina explained the situation. Kal stood impassively nearby, seemingly unbothered by the armed guards surrounding them. You smuggled alien technology, conducted unauthorized research, and now you've helped an alien infiltrator bypass our security, Tanaka summarized. Give me one reason why I shouldn't have you both arrested for treason. Because he's right, Marcus replied simply. The void masses are real, and they're already here. On the main screen, astronomical data from deep space probes showed distortions appearing at the edge of the solar system, spatial anomalies that defied conventional physics. The veil is thinning, Call explained for everyone present. Your breach was small, but it created a template, a pathway that the void masses are now exploiting. My people can contain it temporarily, but we need to repair the fundamental tear. With what? Tanaka demanded. The quantum fold is destroyed. Not entirely, Marcus countered. The core principles are sound, just incomplete. With Call's knowledge, we can modify it, not to breach dimensions, but to seal them properly. Amelia, who had been quietly analyzing the Novan data, spoke up. It could work. The mathematics align with what we've theorized about dimensional stability. And if it doesn't? Tanaka pressed. Then both our realities face consumption by entities that regard conscious life as an interesting anomaly to be dissected, Call replied bluntly. Tanaka rubbed his forehead. You have 48 hours. After that, our military leaders will take more drastic measures, regardless of the consequences. Breakthrough. The reconstructed quantum fold looked nothing like Marcus's original device. Incorporating Novan technology, it now featured crystalline structures that seemed to grow rather than be built, pulsing with internal light that responded to thought as much as physical interaction. It's beautiful, Marcus murmured, watching Call make final adjustments. Beauty is a curious concept to prioritize in technology, Call responded, though there was a hint of pride in the mental voice. But yes, the quantum harmonics are aesthetically balanced. Valentina monitored the global situation on nearby screens. The Novan ships remained in formation, occasionally firing energy pulses to seal smaller rifts that had begun appearing in Earth's upper atmosphere. Meanwhile, the anomalies at the system's edge had grown, consuming 2 deep space probes and causing gravitational distortions detectable from Earth. We're running out of time, she warned. Amelia rushed in with the latest calculations. The dimensional stress is increasing exponentially. Whatever's coming through, it's massive, and there are multiple signatures. Call's mental voice took on an urgency they hadn't heard before. We must activate now, ready or not. The void masses are conserved across dimensional boundaries. Once they fully materialize in your reality, they cannot be sent back. Marcus took a deep breath. Initiating quantum harmonics. The device hummed to life, energy spiraling inward rather than outward as in the original experiment. Instead of opening a doorway, it seemed to be pulling at the fabric of reality itself, tugging at invisible seams to bring them back into alignment. On the monitors, they could see the effect rippling outward from Earth. The Novan ships adjusted their positions, adding their considerable power to the effort, creating a synchronized pulse that spread throughout the solar system. It's working, Amelia said in amazement. The smaller rifts are sealing. But at the system's edge, the largest anomaly was actually expanding, as if fighting against their efforts. Something vast and incomprehensible was pushing through, a darkness that seemed to absorb light, matter, and even the space around it. The dominant mass is resisting, Call communicated, mental voice strained. It's established too much presence in your dimension. Then we need more power, Marcus decided. Can you signal your ships? We need to synchronize everything we have. Already attempting contact, but the dimensional distortion is interfering. Valentina stepped forward suddenly. The communication node, she said, pointing to the reassembled Novan device. Can we use it to amplify the signal? Call's multifaceted eyes widened slightly. Yes, that might work. Human ingenuity is remarkable. As they integrated the communication node into their system, Marcus watched with growing wonder. In 3 weeks, they had gone from accidental first contact to working alongside an alien to save both their worlds. The implications were staggering, if they survived. "Ready," Amelia announced. With the communication node active, Call established direct contact with the Novan fleet. Almost immediately, the ships realigned, focusing their energy technology directly toward the quantum harmonizer. The effect was instantaneous. The reconstructed quantum fold blazed with power, emitting waves of energy that rippled visibly through the air around them. On the monitors, they watched as the dimensional rifts began collapsing one after another, the fabric of reality knitting itself back together. At the edge of the solar system, the massive void entity seemed to contort impossibly, fighting against the dimensional current that was now pulling it back through the closing rift. For a moment, it seemed to be winning, until the Novan ships simultaneously fired golden beams of concentrated energy directly at the anomaly. The resulting backlash caused every piece of equipment in the lab to short-circuit simultaneously. When emergency power came online minutes later, the monitors showed only the empty blackness of space where the rifts had been. "It is done," Call communicated, though the mental voice was weaker than before. "The veil is restored, strengthened, even. Your dimensional intrusion has been corrected. New beginnings." 3 days later, 6 of the 7 Novan ships had returned to their dimension through carefully controlled microrifts. Only one remained in Earth orbit, a diplomatic vessel, according to Call, who had been formally recognized as the first ambassador to humanity. On the university grounds, now cleared of military presence, Marcus, Valentina, and Amelia sat with Call under the open sky. The Novan seemed fascinated by the simple pleasure of feeling sunlight and wind. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. "Will your people allow us to continue dimensional research?" "With supervision," Call replied. "The collective has revised its assessment of humanity. Your species' adaptability and willingness to cooperate against the void masses has impressed many who were calling for your containment." "Containment sounds better than destruction, at least," Valentina noted dryly. "Indeed. Now they speak of potential alliance. Your dimensional perspectives are uniquely different from ours. Together, we might discover approaches neither would find alone." Amelia smiled slightly. "Isn't that how science is supposed to work? Different minds finding truth together." Director Tanaka approached, looking more relaxed than they had ever seen him. "The International Council has approved the formation of the Interdimensional Research and Cooperation Agency," he announced. "They want the 3 of you to lead it, with Call as advisor." Marcus looked stunned. "They're allowing research to continue?" "With strict protocols," Tanaka qualified. "But yes. The general consensus is that we can't put this particular genie back in the bottle, better to understand it than pretend it never happened." Valentina gazed up at the sky, where the faint outline of the Novan ship was just visible in the daylight. "So we truly aren't alone in the universe. Or beyond it."